Today we're going to talk about some bloody good books, and it just so happens that they are all by Black authors because it is Black History Month in the US. I personally feel as well that a lot of these are severely underrated books and they do span a good few genres. I let my TikTok followers decide whether we talked about Black History Month recommendations today or we talked about 2025 book releases and my ARC reading updates for the year, and they picked Black History Month. But if you would like a video on 2025 releases, then just drop a comment below. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. I put out new videos every single Monday. They're about books, movies and other lifestyle bits. Let's get into it. The first author that I want to talk about is Tia Williams. She is a prolific romance writer who actually started out writing in fashion magazines, and I feel like you can tell she is a lifelong writer because the way she writes is so beautiful. I think her books are absolutely perfect for Emily Henry fans. This one in particular, 7 Days in June, is such a beautiful story and it has the second chance romance trope. So if you are a fan of Happy Place by Emily Henry, this is the one for you. It follows our female main character Eva, who is a paranormal romance writer, which by the way also adds so much fun to the story because she literally writes spicy vampire books like one of us. She goes to a romance convention and she bumps into someone that she has known from her past, and it is an awkward encounter. As the book unfolds, you find the story of how they knew each other and how their relationship is going today. When it flicks back to past, it does span a time period of 7 days in June. There's really great representation. Obviously, the female main character is Black, but also the male love interest. She also has chronic illness, so if you're a migraine girly, you are going to relate to this a lot. For such a small book, it's just like jammed packed, full of stuff. And Tia Williams also has another book which I love, which is A Love Song for Ricki Wilde. This is perfect for fans of The Unmaking of June Farrow or The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. It is more romance driven than those other two books, but has a historical element and it's set in New York. If you like books that make you feel all encompassed in a world or a place or a setting, this is the one for you because it explores the Harlem jazz music scene from the 20s and you honestly feel like you are there. It is so rich in culture as well. I actually felt like I was reading something that was non-fiction in all the best ways as someone who doesn't like non-fiction because it feels almost so educational. But don't panic, it's still really easy to read. You're still going to get a top tier romance. I think about this book quite a lot. It was such an enjoyable read. The next author that I'm going to talk about is Kalynn Bayron, who is a young adult fantasy writer. I have a good few books of hers up here, but I specifically want to talk about This Poison Heart, which is a completed duology. It's witches and it's Greek mythology, so if you like books where Hecate is present as the Greek goddess of witchcraft and magic and other things like that, then you are going to love this. It follows Briseis, who basically has these like weird powers that keep happening to her. She doesn't know what's going on, and then one day, to make things even weirder, she inherits this mystery old house, and it's even weirder because she has been adopted. So the reason she has inherited this old house is actually from her birth relatives. It's such a good story. It has equal parts magic, fun, it has a little bit of a sapphic romance too. It has really great family dynamics because she is adopted, like I said, and her parents are two Black women. It's just such a fun original story and the Greek mythology is amazing. If you like YA fantasy, then this is one you absolutely have to read. Is it even going to be one of my videos if I don't talk about The Blood Trials, which is book 1 in the Blood Gift duology? This is book 2. I literally talk about this series any chance I get because I think it is so slept on and I know that so many types of different readers will love it. If you're someone that likes the 2000s dystopian books like Divergent, Hunger Games, but you want something a little bit more adult, you're going to love this. If you like deadly trials and challenges and games like Powerless, you're going to love this. If you like the found family X-Men style powers and teamwork kind of trope, you're going to love this. Like, everybody is going to love it. This book follows Ikenna as she tries to figure out the sudden mysterious death of her grandfather. When he passes away, she's left essentially on her own, as he has been the person that has always raised her. So when he dies, she decides to infiltrate the military training academy and become one of their soldiers, so that she has more insight into the circumstances around him passing away. But to earn her spot in the military academy, she has to do these deadly trials and games, and obviously it does not go smoothly, it's not easy, and there's definitely people who are out to get her. This does have on-page racism, so definitely something to consider, but it is also super fast-paced. Like I said, it does have romance, it does have humour in places as well, and it's just wildly entertaining and addictive. If you haven't read this, it's an absolute must-read. It kind of feels like if you mix Divergent with something like The Serpent and the Wings of Night, maybe. Next one is another young adult fantasy book, and this is the Gilded ones, which is book one in a completed trilogy. This starts off very, very dark, so don't be put off by how young she looks in the illustration, because it's actually like quite difficult to read in a lot of places. It's about an African-inspired society where the girls must undergo a blood purity ritual when they turn 16, and if they have the wrong coloured blood, they are seen as demons and they are cast out of society quite brutally and quite violently. Our main character, Dika, is coming up to her blood ceremony, and of course it does not go well. When she's cast out of society, she finds herself with nowhere to go but to join, again, military training academy. It's there that she discovers the extent of why her blood is different and what she can actually do. And it becomes then much more fantasy based. It sounds dystopian, but I would say it's like proper fantasy. There is only the tiniest bit of romance in this if you do need that in a plot, but there's tons of really, really great found family dynamics, really interesting side characters, and she has a little magical sidekick as well, which is a trope I love. But please do check trigger warnings before you read this, because like I said, it's not always a fun and pleasant read, especially in the first half of book one. I don't know where my copy of this has gone, but I can't do a video and not talk about it because it is honestly such an incredible book, and that is Legendborn. I'm actually in the middle of a reread of book one on audio. I'm rereading so I can be prepared for the book 3 release that is coming very soon. But this is about Brie, who is a young girl whose mum passes away, and after her mum passes away, she decides to go to early college, and the college she goes to is actually the one that her mum went to. Her mum has always tried to keep her away from that place, but she just thought that her mum was being like strict and overprotective. She didn't really think anything too deep into it. When she gets to this college, she joins this secret society and she realizes it's actually a bit of a weird place. It's also super privileged and she experiences a lot of discrimination. There's a lot in this story that touches on Black culture and specifically the origins of Black history in the USA. It's sad in places, it's fun in places, it's entertaining, there's a romance subplot as well, there's tons of magical powers, and it is an Arthurian retelling, which I feel like we get a lot of retellings in fantasy and fantasy adjacent genres, but I don't think I've ever read another Arthurian retelling. So that's exciting. I haven't gone on to book 2 yet because I knew there was going to be such a big gap between 2 and 3. That's why I've waited to do them now. But I've honestly heard people say that book 2 is even better than book 1. So if that's the case, you have nothing to worry about in the slightest. This is young adult, but I would say that it's actually quite a good one for adults because the world building is quite intense in places. And so it does feel like there's enough to like sink your teeth into and it doesn't feel too juvenile. Next, I want to talk about Kennedy Ryan, specifically her sports romance series, Longshot. But I want to preface by saying that I don't actually think this is a sports romance. That's what it's marketed as, that's what it's listed as on Amazon, but I disagree. Actually, when I read this book, I didn't love it. I gave it 3 stars. Purely because it was something completely different to what I expected. So when you go online, you will see a description, if it's still the same as it was when I read this book, that prefaces a sports romance. And whilst there is a romance plot, it actually follows our main character as she endures domestic violence. And the domestic violence is present through a lot of the story. It's not just referenced before the story begins. No, it's happening during your reading experience, and it is incredibly violent and brutal to read about. It is painfully sad, so you cannot go into this book expecting a playful, happy-go-lucky, completely positive sports romance. That's just not what you're going to get. But I do think I would have enjoyed this book a lot more if I had known what I was going to be reading, because I do still think about the story now, and I read it 2 years ago. I remember that the writing was really great. That was not a low part of the story at all. And I remember that I thought she did a really good job of portraying the realities of domestic violence, and I've seen a lot of other people say that too. So I do think that that is a really great book to read, but I would consider it more like women's fiction rather than romance. Then a bonus one that I want to include that I'm not 100% certain on is Magnolia Park. And the reason that I say I'm not 100% certain is that Jessa Hastings has described herself as biracial, but I don't think she has ever fully confirmed what her actual mix or ethnicity is. However, she writes Magnolia in Magnolia Park as half black, half Ukrainian, and she has actually said in interviews before that Magnolia is very similar to her both mentally and physically, and how she was when she was younger. There's also been a couple of other little captions and things that I think hint at her being half black, but I'm not 100% certain. It is about Magnolia, like I said, who is an upper class British socialite, basically a bit of an it girl. This book feels like if you mixed Gossip Girl, the TV show and books, with Made in Chelsea, which is a British reality TV show, if you don't know. A lot of people say like they don't like this because it's all about toxic relationship, but things definitely unfold, and there's so much character growth throughout the story that what you start with is not what you're going to end up with. If you like art references, if you like fashion references, if you like real world, real life settings, you're going to absolutely love this. Also has just like the most beautiful lyrical writing. In fact, I think this is one of my most annotated series, if not my most annotated series of all time. It also switches POV, so book 2 and book 4 of Daisy Hates. It's a different character, though you will meet her in book 1, and so you get a lot of crossover, but like also new things are revealed, and it's super interesting. Then I have a couple on my TBR that I've not got around to reading yet, but that I want to. One is Goddess Crown and the other is Open Water. Goddess Crown is again a young adult fantasy, and I will read you the blurb. Kalynn has been raised in hiding, safe from the reaches of the king. Soon she's thrust into Gala's royal court, a glamorous and treacherous world dominated by powerful men. With enemies on all sides, the only man she can trust is her bodyguard. To survive the court and avenge those she loves, Kalynn must claim the power she was born to wield. And then Open Water is a contemporary fiction, but I know that it's quite unusual because it's written in second person POV, which I loved when I read A Dowry of Blood, but I've only experienced it with that one book up until now. This book has also won tons of awards, like so many awards, and I know that his other book, I think it's called Small Worlds, has also done really, really well. So I haven't got around to this yet, but it's on my TBR cart, but my sister has already read it, and she said that the audio was really good as well, but that she did think it would translate better reading it. So if you are someone that likes to do audio, the book is probably the better format to do it in. But that's it for today. Thank you so much for joining, and if there's any other black authors that you think I should read or sounds like I'm going to enjoy, please drop them in a comment below. Make sure you tune in next Monday for another new video, and I will see you next time. Bye!